All right, Nick Caserio spoke today. Let's kind of get into it. It is the locker room number one source for Texans digital content. Nick Caserio, less than a week away from the combine. He spoke on SportsRadio 610 with Payne and Pendergast, Sean Pendergast and Seth Payne. It's really the only place where he does consistent interviews. Some better than others. Some of them get a little bit too long. I'm not going to lie. But during a time like this, with all the questions and how long it's been since we've heard from him, I thought this was one of the better ones that I've heard with interesting information. He's still going to give you that word salad. There's not going to be sometimes there's a little bit of beef, but for the most part, lot of very heavy vegetarian feel when Nick Caserio speaks. A lot of word salad, but in this instance, I did think he had some interesting stuff to say. So let's kind of react to that. Let's talk about it. Let's talk about some other stuff going on in the news when it comes to the Texans and stuff that we might need to keep an eye on. The offensive philosophy, that's been something we've talked about since the hiring of Nick Caley. Caserio spoke on that, and he kind of repeated what D'Amico and Caley had said. He described the offensive philosophy as hybrid with an emphasis on adjustments. He said that they're going to adjust, square peg, round hole. Another way of saying that, and I was talking about this earlier today, that I know that seems a little bit like revolutionary because of what we've seen from offensive minds.
Damn it, Bobby.
But shouldn't that be the bare minimum? Shouldn't putting your players in the best position to succeed be the bare minimum? I'm not saying that was the case last year. I'm not saying that doesn't excite me, but that should be the bare minimum for an offensive coordinator, right? So a lot of people hear that and they get excited. I get it, but it should be player driven. Like I think that's the bare minimum when it comes to an offensive philosophy. He also described it as, quote, hybrid. So he kind of said that it's going to be a little bit of a mix of New England and the McVay offense. So he said it's going to be a hybrid type of vibe, which is cool. I don't know what that looks like. I don't know what that is supposed to look like visually. But if we think New England offense and we think McVay hybrid, someone much more philosophical than I can perhaps lay that down. But that was what he said. He was then asked about Stefon Diggs and Derek Stingley. He said that he was open to bringing back Derek Stingley. I don't see why he would not be open to bringing back one of the best corners in the league. He also called him one of the best corners in the league. So I don't see why he would not be open to talking about and not bringing back a extension. He's back no matter what. But he said he was open to an extension with Derek Stingley, and I don't see why he wouldn't be open to extending Derek Stingley. He was also asked about Stefon Diggs. He said he was open to all options, as well as extending Stingley. Now, I could see why he would not want to bring back Diggs. I do not see why he would say that he didn't want to bring back Diggs. There's no benefit to that from Nick Caserio's standpoint. So I can understand why he may not say or admit if he is or isn't going to bring back Diggs. Also, reemphasize what we've been talking about, where he basically said that the contract situation was kind of expected, and it wasn't anything that really surprised him or anything like that. So there was nothing that he was surprised by when it came to Stefon Diggs and the extra years, the dead cap, all that time, all that type of stuff. He also said this, and I thought this was interesting, and I don't know if it warranted a follow-up question in this type of situation. But he said that CJ Stroud, they asked him about CJ Stroud's offseason, and they asked him, last offseason he was at Radio Row, he was doing all the interviews. This offseason he wasn't even at Radio Row, and He's said that he's going to do less of those interviews and we're not going to see him that much. What do you think about that? And Caserio just basically talked about CJ Stroud. He said, quote, the biggest growth can come during times of adversity. Again, this was with Payne and Pendergast on Sports Radio 610, which I think we all agree on. Like, it's okay to say that CJ Stroud regressed, but he can be better because of it, especially with new surroundings, whether that's personnel, whether that's coaching, whether that's both, that adversity can make you better. I think that Caserio is emphasizing that. And he pretty much said that CJ Stroud went through some adversity last year. He didn't really get specific on what that meant. I think we all watched CJ Stroud play and we heard what CJ Stroud had to say. And we know what our eyes told us. But I thought that was interesting that he acknowledged that CJ Stroud went through some adversity. He then said something really interesting. He said that and this was in my notes, 2 or 3 things they emphasized for Stroud to focus on. He said, yeah, there's 1 or 2 or 3. I don't remember if he said 1 or 2 or 2 or 3 things that we sat down with CJ Stroud and we told him to focus on. Now, this might be all players where you sit down the end of the year, you talk about what you could do to get better and all that. I'm not saying that's anything crazy, but I thought it was interesting how he said, there were a couple things that CJ Stroud probably needed to focus on. And I just wonder, like, what would those things be? Like, what he probably won't tell us. It's between the player and the front office, something like that. He would say something like that. But I do wonder what 2 or 3 things they would want CJ Stroud to focus on. I think that would be an interesting thing to kind of be a fly on the wall and kind of hear what those things would be. What do they look like? What is the emphasis? What are we talking about? What are those things? I would love to hear that from Caserio. Nothing really much more from the interview that I gathered that was really newsworthy. There was some generic combine, like, what are you looking for in the combine? I think you can go back to this time last year, same question, same type of question. There was, it was the typical good chemistry. If you want to go back and check out what Sean said, there was Seth asked about virtual reality. I guess that Jaden Daniels is using virtual reality to prepare. And just asked if they've thought about that with CJ Stroud. Caserio told a funny Tom Brady story about how, I guess, one time they tried to make Tom Brady use some sort of virtual reality thing, and he said that he basically broke the headset on the ground because he wasn't a big fan of the whole experience and everything that it had to offer. So I thought that was interesting. It was good to hear what Caserio had to say. He'll also be speaking at the Combine, which I'll be at next week. And we'll try to ask him some more questions specific to this team and specific to this draft process and what Caserio will have to say. Thought that was interesting. Other big news in the NFL that impacts everyone, also impacts the Texans. And I saw Graziano had this first. I'm assuming it was a press release, so I don't think it was like some big scoop. The NFL informed teams that the 2025 cap, it's going to fall in the range of 277 to 281 million, which is up from 255. So the Texans, I think, will now be under the salary cap, and they'll be able to figure some things out. Maybe add some depth pieces. Maybe they'll be more willing to swing for the fences and swing big in free agency. Who knows? Again, this is something that impacts everyone. It's not just unique to the Texans, but the Texans will have more money to spend along with everyone else in the NFL, which is not a bad thing. It's not basically anything that's just limited to the Texans. So there you go. That's the news in the NFL on that. Other news, localized news. If we're going through what went down today, this live is going to be a little bit short. Gerrod Johnson is not going to Philly. So his name was thrown out there as a potential Philadelphia Eagles offensive coordinator. We find out today that they are going to promote within. So Gerrod Johnson, he is not going to Philly, and he will remain here as expected. I don't know that too many teams are dying. I know he's getting a lot of interviews, but I don't know that too many teams are really dying to have Gerrod Johnson call plays for him. Just like the Texans didn't want him to. I think that's probably maybe another offseason or two away for Gerrod. So if there was any thought that maybe he would end up in Philly, did not happen. They're promoting with them. They're not going outside of the organization. There was also an interesting article in the Houston Chronicle today. Jonathan Alexander, and there was some investigative stuff done. I saw Brandon Scott did a interview on it about the state of NRG, renovations needed, taxpayers, and options for perhaps a new stadium for NRG. Here's my question. What are the best and worst things about NRG? As far as the game day experience, what would you say are the best, and what would you say are the worst things about NRG Stadium? I think it's kind of a pain in the ass to get there. I think there's a lot of wasted space. I think the way in which they handle the roads has gotten better. I don't think it's great. I think there's a lot of room on the concourse. I think they do a good job of that. I think the entertainment is okay. Kind of seems a little bit pandery and grifty at times, where they're trying a little bit too hard to be cool. But I think they've at least found the balance of too stale and now trying a little bit too hard to be cool. I think once they find that balance, they'll be fine. I think the swing was necessary. But I mean, I don't need to see, and I'm the biggest Swisher House fan there is. I probably have 95, 100 CDs from the Swisher House days in my closet. That's not a halftime show. I probably don't need to see that one again. I think they've done it like 46 times now in the last 3 years. So maybe we can progress past that. I think the food's good. Plenty of beer. Again, the concourses are fine. I don't know that NRG, it's not as nice as Jerry World. There's not as much to do outside of Jerry World. I think it sucks that you can't meet up with someone and really have a drink. The tailgating's cool. I think getting into the stadium is a little bit more of a pain in the ass than it needs to be. I don't think it's very efficient. But it's fine. It's fine. It could be a hell of a lot worse. It's not terrible. It's fine. Not bad. It's really time for an update. Fifth Ward Texan says, I mean, they agree with you. And I mean, that was basically the whole foundation. That was basically the whole basis of today's column article, whatever the hell you want to call it, in the Houston Chronicle, was that it's time. It's time for an upgrade. So there it is. Q says, win a championship and then go for a new stadium. I'm all for it, but getting a new stadium now, on what basis they are asking for a new stadium? I don't know. Like, you got to win a championship to get a new stadium? I don't know. I think the basis is basically that the renovations are expensive. They need to do something. They need to keep up. Not really sure. I just don't. I would be fine with it going to the burbs, quite honestly. I think downtown Houston, the job that they've done as far as driving into downtown from either direction is disgraceful. I think it's embarrassing. I think it's pathetic. Luckily, you're kind of a little bit outside of that when you go to NRG, so it's not as bad, but it still is bad. Like the access roads, the timing of them, the way in which they're merged into, it's embarrassing. especially when you talk about the Loop 5969 to Westheimer. They took all that time to where you had to take detours, and they made it even worse. Like, whoever the hell is doing these projects and designing these projects downtown, they remind me of my daughter. She sits there and she throws a bunch of blocks on the floor, and then she just goes to the next thing, and she just throws a bunch of cars on the floor, and then she's throwing stickers on the floor, and she's throwing markers on the floor. And she just leaves mess after mess after mess. And that's pretty much what they do with the way that they handle it. Getting into downtown in Houston is disgraceful. And it's the worst of any major city. It's worse than Dallas. It's worse than Vegas. It's worse than New Orleans. It's bad. So I don't know where they put a new stadium, but they got to figure something out. Yeah, and TxDOT's not good either. That was such a good concept. That was such a good idea. You know what would be great if they would just get rid of the Astrodome? And I'm not trying to make this an Astrodome thing, and maybe figure out something where it could go in there. It's pathetic. It's really, really bad. And they're talking about Super Bowls coming in town and stuff like that. I don't care about the Super Bowl coming here. Quite frankly, it's embarrassing when it does, because of how inconvenient everything is and how much of a pain in the ass it is to get to the stadium. Like, the drop-off areas are terrible. Have you ever taken an Uber to NRG? It's awful. There's only like certain places you can go. They're yelling at you not to get off on the street. The blue lot, there's only one way to get into the blue lot, which is insane. They have all that area in the back, and they have that access road, and there's only one way to get into the blue lot. You got to come through Kirby, and then you got to go to the blue lot from there. So basically, even when they have it one way, everybody's just sitting there waiting to be able to turn into the blue lot. And the people who can't go into the blue lot and might need to go into the green lot, they can't get in because they got that blocked off. So you have to go all the way around near Main, and then you have to turn right into it, and they have it bunched together. It's pathetic. It's pathetic. And then there's all the complaining, and I think it's valid to a certain point, about, well, why are the seats so empty? Well, the seats are so empty because I was literally 60 feet away from the lot 1 hour before kick, but because they're stopping traffic here and they're not even pushing in. The other thing they should do is where the blue lot is and where they let people in. You know how when you turn into the blue lot, they have like that area where like the sections are? It's not long enough. Put it further down, closer to the stadium. Push it back. Because basically you have 3 cars in line and they're bunching up everything else. It's pathetic. And then you have this big old thing, the Astrodome, sitting there, and people come in from out of town and they're like, what is that? That's the Astrodome. What? You're kidding me? That used to be the most impressive stadium in the world? Like, they're making it look bad. They're making it look awful. Like, it's not honoring the Astrodome by keeping it there. Yankee Stadium got torn down. Cowboy Stadium, Texas Stadium got torn down. You know what they did? They improved the hell out of those roads to where it's easier to get into their downtown with it. The Astrodome's just sitting there, taking up space. It looks terrible. It's like introducing someone to your grandpa when he's 97 years old and he has Alzheimer's, and he's saying all kinds of inappropriate, stupid things. And you're talking about how great he once was. And all they're doing is watching him sitting there cussing and mumbling and stuff like that. That's what the Astrodome is. They got to figure something out. If they just want to move from the area at this point, I'm okay with it. Problem is, they got rodeo, and rodeo's awesome. Rodeo's incredible. Rodeo's one of the best events in the entire country. And they just got all that disaster. Other than that, it's a fine stadium. I like it. I like the game day experience. Back in Black Swarm in the super chat. You ain't never hate.
Swarm
says, do you know what happens to existing PSL holders if there's a new stadium? I don't, man. I have no idea. I would imagine they give y'all some sort of dibs and tax the F out of you. If I'm being honest, they'd probably say your PSL is here, but you got to transfer it over. You got to pay a $2,000 transfer fee or something like that. I don't know what they do. I know a couple of years ago, there was opportunities for people to get season tickets that never in their wildest dreamed that they could get season tickets. Shout out to those people who were able to take advantage of that. I have no idea. The PSL thing is above my head. I have no idea what that is. I have no idea what that looks like. No clue. Don't really understand what it looks like at all. A cussing, mumbling grandpa, the Astrodome. That's what it is. Are you not embarrassed when someone comes in town and you tell them, "Hey, there's the Astrodome right there"? What? Have you ever shown someone the Astrodome from out of town and then been like, "Damn, that's impressive"? At this point, like in its current state? Hell no. Absolutely not. You know that. I know that. Everybody knows that. There's nothing impressive about it right now. It's rough. It's really, really, really rough. It's unfortunate because it's one of the legendary things, but it's like whenever you're clearing out, you always have that relative or you have someone who in your life, could be your wife, could be husband, whatever, that doesn't want to get rid of something. Oh, that was my great grandma's shirt. Oh, that was her sixth shirt that she wore on the sixth day of kindergarten. Well, what do you want to do with it? Oh, let's just set it here. It's in the way. Well, let's just keep it. Pathetic. It's embarrassing. It's bad. WrestleMania 17 was sick there, man. I was there. God, that was badass. That was a badass event. Do you think this idea should have been brought into the light maybe a few years ago? Yeah, they never should have kept the Astrodome up. It's junky. It doesn't make sense. Oh, but there's memories. Oh, but you can salvage it for what? That costs money too. Why? Where's Yankee Stadium? I want you to go find Yankee Stadium. If you can go get inside a Yankee Stadium right now, I'll give you my house, I'll give you my car, I'll give you everything. You can have everything. It's torn down. You don't think there was history there at Yankee Stadium? Texas Stadium. Let's go check it out. It's torn down. I mean, you can't even go inside this thing. People say, well, you could do this and this is who cares? Who cares what it looked like? Some more parking spots. Make it to where I don't have to go one way on a game day. Give me a break. It's terrible. It is the locker room #1 source for Texans digital content. That's the end of that. It turns into a little bit of an Astrodome thing, but I just think they need to figure some stuff out with NRG and with that area as well. Just got to figure it out. I don't know how taxpayers feel about the Texans. I don't know if they're dying to get a new stadium. Some people they might want to, with the amount of people that might support the stadium up by it. They might want to run this thing for 300 more years. Whenever they're flying while they're playing football, like flying football. Who knows? Globe Life Arlington's still there. Yeah, and they still use it. You know why they got rid of it? Because they couldn't build a roof. It was going to be more expensive to build a roof. But they've expanded. There's a lot more area there too. It doesn't impact anything. The parking lot's still there. They were using it for XFL games. You can't use the Astrodome. The only reason that is still there is because they were forced to build a new stadium. They built the new stadium, and they have the Cowboys Stadium right there. It's not wasting any space. It's not taking up any valuable space. Very easy to get around there. The difference between getting around at Jerry World and getting around at NRG, not even close. Not even close. They can have a Cowboys and Rangers game on the same day. It's easier to get around there and navigate there than if there's just a Texans game or just a Astros game. That's just a fact. And that's not all bunched in downtown. The honeymoon phase with Nick Caserio. I on the thumbnail, you can see it says RIP to the process phase. And I say that because when Nick Caserio first arrived, and I thought it was fair, he talked about process over results. In other words, we might not win a lot of games, but we need to get our process right. We need to get the process right to where we're building something, we're stockpiling assets, and we're not in a rush for a quick fix. It's why you saw him wait as long as he did for the Deshaun Watson trade. And I thought he handled that perfect. Tomorrow, I'm going to count down the top 5 Nick Caserio moves. Spoiler alert, that one's going to make an appearance in the top 5 Caserio moves. But now we're not necessarily in the process over results phase. I don't know if it's a honeymoon phase or what, but we're not in the process over results type of phase. So how does Nick Caserio take advantage of what he's got to do? Today, me and Stoots had the discussion about aggressiveness, and Cody said you need to be aggressive. There's no excuse for money. My question is, what does aggressive look like? Is that paying top-end money for the top guard in free agency? Does it mean you pay top-end money for one of the receivers in free agency? What does the aggressiveness look like? Because I think there's a line between aggressive and foolish. And at some point, the Texans are going to have to figure out how to evaluate and how to hit on guys on the offensive side of the ball. They've mastered defense. Anytime they sign someone, anytime they pick someone up on the defensive side of the rock from this point on, I'm sitting here and I'm saying, man, this guy's going to be awesome. This guy's going to be awesome. Offensive side, complete opposite. Complete opposite when it comes to the offensive side of the rock. They got to figure out how to hit on guys. I keep hearing about the Philadelphia Eagles. They did this, they did that. And that's what happens when a team wins the Super Bowl. Well, they hit this guy. They got this guy. They got that guy. They signed this guy. They did this. You know what else they did? They took advantage of that window they had when Jalen Hurts was on his rookie deal. Texans kind of failed there with CJ Stroud because they misevaluated. They spent a large chunk of that money on Shaq Mason, Titus Howard, and Dalton Schultz. That's what they spent their money. Like as far as offensive assets, Stefon Diggs, you can throw him in there. Joe Mixon, I guess, although that was a pretty good bargain. But when it comes to being overly aggressive and bringing in somebody on their rookie deal, the Miami Dolphins got Tyreek Hill for Tua. They drafted Waddle. The Chiefs, they did a lot for Mahomes. They used it to sign guys on the other side of the rock. On defense, it was smart money with Danielle Hunter, Azeez Al-Shire. But on offense, the Texans, they paid Dalton Schultz. They paid Titus Howard. They paid Shaq Mason. And now you're kind of out of the reckless phase. You're kind of out of the reckless phase. And this isn't the process anymore. The Texans basically acted, and I get what they were trying to do, but the decisions that they were making, it resembled someone who won $5,000 on a scratch off and just decided they were going to go to the mall and buy all the dumb shit they could buy. Like, how much thought really went into what they were doing there? Like, you gave Titus Howard an extension before you had to. You treated Shaq Mason like he was one of the offensive guards. Now your line of thinking is, well, you got to solidify the offensive line. Just because it's the most expensive doesn't mean that's what you're doing. And I'm kind of giving him the benefit of the doubt because I'm saying reckless. It could have just been incompetent, and they actually evaluated it and thought that they were spending the right money. Like the tight end market last year, you look at where the guys went and what the money was. They didn't want to franchise tag Dalton Schultz. Okay, that's fine. So what did they do? They franchise tagged him twice. They avoided franchise tagging Dalton Schultz once by franchise tagging him twice. The average salary that he's getting pretty much guaranteed in 2 years is what the franchise tag basically is at the tight end position. I still think Dalton Schultz can be a productive player. I'm not sitting here saying that it's the same thing as Shaq Mason or Titus Howard. I think he can be a productive player. But that's basically what you did when you had the aggressive. The time to be aggressive was the previous 2 years. These contracts are lined up to the final year that CJ Stroud is not eligible for an extension. You can push the money back. You can figure it out. But that's basically what they did. So now they need to do what the Eagles did, and they need to find bargains. They need to find a Mekhi Becton. Like I keep hearing about Smith. Oh, give him $20 million a year, bring him in, put him at right guard. You know what would be better? If they could find someone like Mekhi Becton. I think he signed a $3 million contract. He was a bust. He was a big part of what they did this year. Find something like that. But like the overall aggressiveness, I don't know what it looks like. And I think that's always the danger. Oh, just pay like that's why teams overpay in free agency. Because you have a need, and instead of actually weighing out the other options to get the need, you just say, I'm gonna get the best thing here. I'm going to pay Snead like the Titans did last year. I'm going to pay Calvin Ridley. The Texans got to figure something out here. They got to figure out their evaluation process, and they got to coach up what they get. I'm not saying that to be negative. I'm saying it because it's crucial as hell. Process over results is dead. Let's have a moment of silence for process over results. It's dead. Now it's time for results. If you have a draft like you did last year, you're in good shape. You're not going to be spending as much as you did in free agency last year. There's not a Danielle Hunter. There's not an Azeez Al-Shire. Fortunately, you've taken care of a lot of premium areas where guys overpay. You don't need to give Darius Slayton $15 million. Some of these veteran receivers, maybe they make sense. They're going to be cheaper than what they look like right now. What the price appears to be right now is probably going to go down. But the reckless aggressiveness phase has already happened. They swung and missed. Not screwed at all. I see in the chat someone saying, you're not screwed at all. You got to do it right. And maybe they're going to buckle down and they're really going to tighten up because they acted like they just had some money that they could throw around. Titus Howard was going to be blocking for CJ Stroud whether they gave him the extension or not. You saw him get hurt. The price would have gone down. Even if he would have played throughout that contract, I don't know that the price is much different than what they gave him. Same thing with Shaq Mason. He got some extension like he's one of the best guards in the league. Dalton Schultz, 2 franchise tags. I can understand that one a little bit more. But now you got to find those gems. You got to find guys to contribute. But the process over results is dead. We heard what Caserio had to say earlier today. I think he knows this. I think I'm going to ask him about the process over results and how this phase is next week at the Combine. That's where it is. That's not a negative thing. It's not a positive thing. It could be a hell of a lot worse. They could be a hell of a lot worse off than they are right now. But that's just where they are. So they're not cooked. They just got to be better than they've been so far. Because it's a different time. You're not just throwing bread around. Appreciate y'all for coming through. Subscribe, like, right along. Tomorrow, the best moves that Caserio has made. I'm having trouble with the worst. Help me out with the worst moves. I have 4. 5 is getting a little bit more difficult. I have one in mind, but let me know what y'all think are the worst moves that Nick Caserio has made. I agree. Xavier Hutchinson, by the way, Marco deserves 1 or 2 more years. Mechie, maybe not, but yeah, Hutchinson, yeah, he can be one of your 5th, 6th. He'd be your 5th, 6th guy, no doubt. Yeah, you don't have to punt on him. It's fine. I'm not sitting here. He's not like 2 or 3, not or even 4 yet, but yeah, I agree on that. Let me know what you think Caserio's worst moves are, and be sure to subscribe, like, right along, and most importantly, always remember, when it comes to this Texan stuff, we're all in it together. Much appreciation. Appreciate y'all for rolling through.
It's the Locker Room on YouTube. You know what it is. Let's get it. Hey, Locker Room. Yeah, we in the locker room. Texas talk. Yeah, you know what we about to do. Localize every angle's what we really do. We the source. We the post.